Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a truly epic sweep across the globe, and I mean that. We're cutting across scales that stretch from the absolute largest structures we can see rotating in the cosmos,
All the way down.
all the way down to the very intimate and messy ethics that govern the data training our artificial intelligence.
It's a huge range. We've got a mountain of reports here covering breakthroughs in physics, some really critical geopolitical flashpoints, and of course the big regulatory battles that are shaping our future.
It really is an enormous stack of material.
It is, but that's precisely why we're here, right? Our mission is to cut through all that global noise, to synthesize the biggest things happening in science, geopolitics, and technology, and really give you the context you need to be genuinely well-informed.
It's not just about what happened this week.
Exactly. It's about why it matters. What are the implications for the future? Whether we're talking about, the fabric of space-time itself or the stability of Western alliances, it's a journey. So let's get right into it.
I think the only way to start a deep dive this broad is to start at the ultimate frontier.
The cosmos.
The cosmos. It seems science is delivering some headlines that are forcing cosmologists to fundamentally rewrite their models. And this first discovery is massive. Literally.
Oh, this is a monumental finding. It genuinely challenges the core assumptions of, our entire current cosmology. Scientists have identified the largest known rotating structure in the whole universe.
Okay, when we say largest, what exactly are we defining? What does this thing even look like?
It's described as a monumental thread-like configuration. So you should think of it as a supercolossal cosmic filament, like a piece of the cosmic web.
And it's not just a bunch of galaxies clustered together.
No, that's the key. It comprises hundreds of distinct galaxies, massive quantities of gas, and most importantly, that invisible scaffolding that holds the cosmos together, dark matter.
And the key word, the one that differentiates this from other superstructures we've found, is rotating.
Yes. That unified rotation is the scientific challenge. It's the whole ballgame. Because traditional cosmological models, particularly the standard model of cold dark matter, they suggest that structures just shouldn't have enough time.
Not enough time in the 13.8 billion year history of the universe.
Exactly. Not enough time to grow, organize themselves into something this colossal, and then maintain such a coherent, unified spin. It's just too big, too organized, too fast.
Okay, let's unpack that. If the standard model doesn't easily account for this, what does it mean? What alternative theories does this discovery make us look at?
Well, it forces us to look very closely at the dynamics of the early universe.
Yeah.
Perhaps there were much larger density fluctuations in that primordial plasma than we've accounted for.
So bigger starting clumps, basically.
In a way, yes. It could have allowed this structure to seed and grow much faster.
Right.
Some theoretical physicists might even start revisiting ideas about primordial black holes influencing how these things form.
And what about dark matter itself?
It could suggest that the behavior of dark matter is more complex than we thought, that it interacts in subtle ways beyond just gravity, which might help maintain this massive coherence. The sheer existence of this thing and its spin, it just suggests processes or timescales in galaxy formation that are far more sophisticated than our current simulations can reproduce.
So we're seeing this structure because of its gravitational pull on all the galaxies and gas inside it. What does that tell us about dark matter? I mean, this invisible, enigmatic stuff.
Well, dark matter is the glue here. It's the scaffolding. We can't see it, but we know it makes up about 85% of the total mass in the universe.
Right.
By observing the gravitational effects, the sheer scale of this uniform rotation, researchers are getting a pivotal new look at how dark matter influences the formation and interaction of galaxies within these supercolossal frameworks.
Could it even tell us what dark matter is?
It could place new constraints on its particle properties. The coherence of the spin might favor certain theoretical models over others, maybe models that propose a slightly warmer or more interactive form of dark matter. It's a huge piece of the puzzle in deciphering the universe's history and its composition.
That is a staggering implication for our understanding of everything.
Okay.
Shifting from the super colossal down to the super dense, we also have some powerful confirmation of some long-standing physics theories related to black holes.
Yes, this is a beautiful confirmation of decades of genius, really. And it's all driven by a recent detection of gravitational waves. The data provided really solid evidence for two major predictions of physics.
First up, Stephen Hawking's area theorem. Can you explain that simply for us?
I'll try. The area theorem is, well, it's profound but also straightforward. It says that the total surface area of a black hole's event horizon can never, ever decrease.
Never.
Never. So when two black holes merge, the new resulting black hole has to have an event horizon area that is equal to or larger than the sum of the two originals.
It's sort of a law of cosmic conservation.
You can think of it like that. It's a geometric statement about entropy and gravity. And this gravitational wave detection, it showed that the calculation holds true. It's a powerful confirmation of general relativity under the most extreme conditions you can imagine.
And the second confirmation, that relates to Albert Einstein, right? The ring down.
That's the most evocative part. When two black holes collide, they don't just, snap into a final shape.
Right.
The resulting single black hole momentarily vibrates. It rings like a perfectly tuned bell struck by a cosmic hammer before it settles down into its final stable state.
Wow.
And that characteristic final ringing phase, which is a key prediction of Einstein's field equations, was precisely evidenced in the gravitational wave signals.
It's like an auditory fingerprint from space.
Metaphorically, yes.
Yeah.
It confirms exactly how these cataclysmic mergers happen. I mean, think about it. We're confirming this esoteric behavior from billions of light years away, and the precision is just stunning.
It really is. Okay, we've confirmed theories about the past and the very, very distant. Now let's talk aspiration. Let's talk about the warp drive.
The Holy Grail.
For decades, this was just confined to science fiction, but we're seeing sources suggest that theoretical breakthroughs are bringing it into the realm of, well, difficult physics rather than impossible math.
The theoretical barrier has certainly shifted. It's giving physicists genuine hope. Researchers have presented new mathematical methods for potentially, and I stress potentially, circumventing traditional propulsion limitations.
Specifically, the speed of light barrier.
Exactly. The new methodology centers on manipulating space-time itself using very specific configurations of quantum fields.
And the key concept here, the big sticking point, is that mind-bending idea of negative energy density.
Precisely. That is the linchpin. To create a stable warp bubble, which is a distortion that compresses space ahead of the ship and expands space behind it, you need exotic matter that has a negative energy density.
Why is that so crucial?
Because you need that gravitational repulsion effect to distort space-time without violating general relativity locally.
Negative energy. I mean, that sounds like something you invent for a blockbuster movie. Do we have any real-world parallel to this concept?
We do, actually. The closest physical parallel we have in the lab is called the Casimir effect.
The Casimir effect.
This is where quantum mechanics predicts, and we've actually measured a net negative pressure between two closely spaced, uncharged, conductive plates in a vacuum.
And that's a form of negative energy.
It's a very subtle, microscopic manifestation of quantum fields yielding a negative energy density, yes. The challenge is scaling that up to interstellar levels. I mean, that would require tremendous magnitudes of harnessed negative energy. Or simulating its effects with carefully controlled quantum fields, which is a process we are still decades, maybe centuries from mastering.
So we've moved from, is it impossible, to, okay, how do we engineer it? What does this shift mean for major organizations like NASA?
It means they're taking it seriously. Agencies like the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, and various private aerospace entities are increasingly focused on pushing speed limits. The discussion is no longer just a fun thought experiment in theoretical physics. It's being approached as a massive engineering challenge.
Right.
Even our current missions, like the Parker Solar Probe, which is getting incredibly fast, already exemplify this push to achieve unprecedented velocities, even if they operate strictly within sublight constraints. This breakthrough could eventually redefine humanity's entire relationship with the cosmos.
While we're redefining interstellar travel, we also have new research redefining our home turf, the Milky Way galaxy.
Right, our own backyard. Historically, we had a very simplified origin story for the Milky Way.
The single collision theory.
Exactly. The idea was that an ancient, singular collision with a smaller satellite galaxy created the thin and the thick disk of our galaxy. But new spectroscopic research says that whole narrative is far too simplistic.
It sounds like the Milky Way is less of a simple merger and more of a complex, evolving melting pot.
That's a perfect way to put it. Researchers now suggest the galaxy's formation isn't defined by just one ancient collision, but rather by multiple evolutionary events and continuous processes happening over billions of years.
What kind of processes are we talking about?
We're talking about episodic bursts of star formation, massive gravitational interactions pulling in material from all over, and a really complex inflow of metal poor material from the galactic halo.
And how are we figuring all this out now?
Advanced spectroscopy. It allows us to trace the chemical footprints of stellar populations all the way back to their origins. It's been the key to untangling this much richer, more dynamic history.
And what do we call the Milky Way in structural terms? Is that still the same?
Yes, it remains officially classified as a barred spiral galaxy, and the evolution is ongoing. We are still actively interacting with satellite galaxies, most notably the Sagittarius dwarf spheroidal galaxy.
Which is going to merge with us eventually.
That's the prediction. So our galaxy's story is this continuous dynamic narrative of consumption and growth.
Speaking of dynamic narratives, one of the most promising candidates for life outside our solar system, TRAPPIST-N, just hit a pretty sobering scientific setback.
Yes, this is a major disappointment for the exoplanet community. TRAPPIST-1m was, well, it was the shining star, one of the most promising Earth-like exoplanets we knew of, situated squarely in the habitable zone of its ultra-cool dwarf star.
So why the sudden downgrade? What happened?
New high-resolution simulations indicate that TRAPPIST-2-1n likely lacks a substantial atmosphere.
Which you absolutely need to support liquid water.
Right, which you need to support life as we know it. Researchers modeled the planet's atmospheric composition and its evolutionary history, and they concluded that the atmosphere was either stripped away early in its history by intense stellar activity from its M-dwarf star, or it just failed to form adequately in the first place.
And without that protective atmospheric layer,
the surface conditions would be far too harsh. We're talking intense radiation, wild temperature swings, making the presence of stable liquid water impossible.
So where does this leave the search?
It forces future astronomical explorations to pivot. It emphasizes the need for robust data on atmospheric stability, not just the temperature range, before we label any exoplanet truly Earth-like. The focus now shifts to other candidates in the TRAPPIST-1 system, like 1D or 1F, which might prove to be more resilient.
A good dose of scientific reality there. Finally, before we leave the cosmos, we have to acknowledge the military dimension, the domain of space surveillance.
Exactly. It's a huge part of what happens up there now. SpaceX completed yet another national security mission this week, launching NROL-77.
That's a classified payload for the United States National Reconnaissance Office, the NROL.
Correct. The NROL is responsible for developing, launching, and operating the nation's intelligence satellites.
And as is pretty typical with these missions, details about the satellite's specific capabilities are scarce.
Absolutely, that's by design. But the launch itself underscores the growing critical reliance on satellite capabilities for intelligence gathering, for reconnaissance, and even for communication resilience. Yeah. Space is no longer merely a scientific frontier.
No, it's the ultimate high ground.
It is. It's increasingly the ultimate high ground for modern military intelligence and a major domain of geopolitical competition between global powers.
A perfect transition point. We move from high orbit and the fragility of space assets all the way down to solid ground, the volatility of the deep Earth, and the politics of our shifting climate.
A lot to cover down here.
We start with a stark reminder that even as we look to the stars, the ground beneath our feet remains profoundly volatile. There was major seismic activity off Japan's coast.
A powerful 7.6 magnitude earthquake struck off Japan's northeastern coast. And the shallowness of the epicenter, only about 10 kilometers deep, really amplified the destructive power.
But the response was incredibly fast.
Incredibly. Authorities immediately issued tsunami warnings and massive evacuation orders. It's a testament to Japan's extensive and highly effective preparedness plans, which have been built over decades of experience.
What were the immediate consequences that were reported?
Well, initial reports confirmed at least 23 injuries, with considerable structural damage and ongoing aftershocks. The speed of the emergency mobilization certainly helped mitigate the worst of the damage, but the event forcefully reminds the world that Japan sits directly on the Pacific Ring of Fire,
a region of incredible seismic activity,
where these powerful events are just a perpetual immediate threat.
And this geological dynamism seems to be visible globally right now, not just in Japan.
Yeah, it is. It's as if the Earth is reminding us of its power. We simultaneously saw the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii displaying these spectacular lava fountains, which is a huge draw for volcanology enthusiasts.
And at the same time, we had the Northern Lights.
Exactly. Separately, there was major solar activity that led to a forecast for these breathtaking northern lights displays across unusually southern latitudes. These synchronized events just highlight the incredibly dynamic and interconnected nature of Earth's geological and atmospheric systems.
You also included a fascinating study on Earth's internal thermal mechanics, which connects directly to these surface movements.
Yes, this study was published in Geophysical Research Letters. It analyzed the Earth's internal heat loss over vast timescales, about 400 million years.
And what was the key finding?
The key finding is a sustained and rapid cooling in the Pacific Mantle Hemisphere compared to the African side.
Why is that differential cooling significant for us on the surface?
Because that uneven distribution, that differential heat loss inside the planet, is the primary driver of mantle convection.
Which in turn drives plate tectonics.
Exactly. The cooling beneath the Pacific side likely accelerates the sinking of tectonic slabs in that region, which contributes to all the seismic activity we see along the Ring of Fire. And furthermore, this internal dynamic plays a vital, though very long-term, role in global climate patterns over geological timescales, influencing volcanism and the cycling of carbon dioxide.
So those deep Earth processes ultimately shape the climate we live in today.
Precisely. It's one massive interconnected system, from deep mantle convection to surface temperatures, atmospheric stability, and seismic shifts.
Moving from deep Earth to deep time, we have a major archaeological discovery challenging our assumptions about the artistic world of Ice Age Europeans.
This is truly a stunning historical revelation. It comes from a 13,000-year-old artifact found in a cave system in Europe. Researchers discovered definite traces of azurite.
Azurite, which is a vibrant, deep blue pigment.
Exactly.
Why is finding a blue pigment so important? I mean, don't they find lots of cave paintings?
They do, but for decades, the long-held belief was that Ice Age Europeans primarily used only red and black pigments, derived from ochres, iron oxides, manganese.
Right, the earth tones.
Yes. Azurite is this vivid blue. It requires a complex understanding of mineral processing to stabilize it for use. This challenges that whole assumption of a monochromatic or limited artistic existence for these ancient populations.
So what does the discovery of blue imply about their society?
It implies a sophistication well beyond just basic survival needs. The color blue often carries strong symbolic or ritual significance in many cultures, the sky, water, maybe deities.
Right.
So the ability to source, process, and apply this difficult pigment suggests a far more complex and nuanced understanding of minerals, maybe trade routes to acquire them, and a rich artistic tradition and complex cultural identity. It forces scholars to delve deeper into the cognitive abilities and social frameworks of these early humans.
And sticking with ancient Britain, what about the new findings around Stonehenge?
Archaeologists have been very busy near Stonehenge, specifically around the Durrington Walls henge. They've revealed the discovery of 16 mysterious pits dated to approximately 2480 BCE.
And these aren't just random holes.
Definitely not. These pits align with earlier earthworks. They have a diameter up to 10 meters. They're clearly not random.
So what's the leading theory on their purpose?
The consensus is that they likely delineated some kind of sophisticated, highly organized ceremonial boundary, or maybe a solar alignment marker. This finding illustrates the complex social and ritual landscape of Neolithic Britain, reinforcing the idea that these sites were massive ritual centers that required advanced engineering and landscape management skills.
And this complexity seems to mirror other large-scale discoveries happening globally.
It does. It aligns with major ongoing projects like the one that recently found 483 ancient settlements in Asia Minor. We are continuously enriching our knowledge of these complex, structured past civilizations that flourished across vast territories, often far earlier than we previously assumed.
Now let's pivot to a very current and very contentious issue that touches on deep Earth and the future of climate: Brazil's political conflict over its fossil fuel transition. It seems President Lula da Silva is trying to satisfy two completely opposing camps here.
He is navigating an impossible position. He's trying to balance economic growth with his international image as an environmental steward. Shortly after the major COP30 climate talks, Brazil's Congress passed a controversial measure that significantly weakened protections for the Amazon rainforest.
Specifically undermining environmental impact assessments, or EIAs.
Yes, for infrastructure and resource projects. This signals a very clear prioritizing of immediate economic growth domestically.
That is a huge environmental rollback on the international stage. But at the same time, Lula issued a directive for a full fossil fuel transition.
Yes, that's the political tightrope he's walking. President Lula directed his government to create a national roadmap for a just and planned energy transition. And crucially, this plan includes establishing an energy transition fund.
And how would that be funded?
It would be financed by revenues generated specifically from oil and gas exploration.
So using fossil fuel profits to fund the transition away from fossil fuels.
Yeah.
What is the core tension here?
The tension is immense. Brazil is actively aiming to become the world's fourth largest oil producer by 2030. They have significant expansion of offshore drilling projected, including areas near the mouth of the Amazon.
Wow.
So while the Energy Transition Fund provides a positive framework, the challenge is how legally ring-fenced that money really is. Will the political pressures to prioritize infrastructure spending and immediate growth just erode the fund's environmental mission?
It's a tough circle to square.
It is. Lula faces high political costs, both internationally for the Amazon rollback and domestically if the transition harms jobs in those resource-dependent states. It perfectly illustrates the conflicts so many nations face when balancing resource extraction and urgent global climate commitments.
Indeed. Moving now to the accelerating technology landscape, specifically where cutting-edge physics meets the battlefield and the boardroom.
A big leap.
We started with cosmic physics. Now let's apply quantum physics to military communication right here on Earth. We have reports of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, the PLA, testing a revolutionary device.
This is a major development in the militarization of quantum technology. The PLA is developing and field testing a highly portable quantum radio device. It weighs just 3 kilograms, and they're testing it with Border Patrol troops in really rugged, challenging terrain.
Okay, so what's the military advantage of a quantum radio over a traditional military system?
Well, traditional radio signals rely on electromagnetic waves, and they struggle immensely in challenging terrains. Think about deep mountain valleys, dense triple canopy forests, or complicated urban environments.
Right, you need line of sight.
You need line of sight, you often need large antenna, and they're easily broken or jammed. This quantum radio prototype is designed as a receiver that exploits quantum coherence to detect extremely faint magnetic fluctuations.
Which means it can receive signals where conventional radios just can't.
Exactly. It's demonstrated the ability to reliably receive radio signals from tens of kilometers away in environments where conventional systems would typically fail completely. This provides critical emergency and tactical communication capabilities. It's a massive advantage for covert operations and intelligence gathering in denied areas.
This sounds like an immediate step forward for battlefield technology, and it really frames that geopolitical race.
Absolutely. This development puts China and the U.S. right at the forefront of these intensifying efforts to militarize quantum technologies. Whether it's for communication, computing, or advanced detection, quantum physics is transitioning very rapidly from the lab into a genuine geopolitical race with profound military implications.
It's a way to communicate that's much harder to jam or intercept.
Making it a critical security asset.
Okay, switching to the civilian tech front. Artificial intelligence is rapidly integrating into professional workflows, specifically coding, with Anthropic's new integration into Slack.
Yes. Anthropic, which is known for its focus on safety, has launched Claude Code. It integrates its capabilities directly into team communication platforms like Slack. This is designed to revolutionize the daily life of developers.
So instead of switching platforms, they can just ask for code in their chat.
Right. They can delegate coding tasks, asking for snippets, debugging help, assistance with complex logical structures, just using natural language prompts right within their chat threads.
Yeah.
A huge productivity boost.
It seems like it. But Anthropic is heavily focused on safety, which is where this concept of the alignment tax comes in.
Yes. Claude is built upon something they call constitutional AI.
Okay.
This means the model is trained against a set of principles, a constitution, to ensure it adheres to safety guidelines and ethical behavior, minimizing harmful or biased outputs. The alignment tax is the acknowledgement that this ethical adherence, while necessary, might occasionally slow the AI down or slightly impede its maximum effectiveness compared to a completely unchecked model.
So it's that constant trade-off, morality versus maximum utility in generative AI.
Precisely. It's a core challenge for the whole industry. How do you build a massively powerful tool that is also demonstrably safe and aligned with human values, knowing that those safety measures might introduce a little bit of friction? That's where the real ethical discussion is happening.
And while professional tools get integrated, consumer commerce is accelerating its convergence with AI.
We see that vividly with Instacart's new move. They're allowing customers to buy groceries directly within ChatGPT.
So you can just chat with an AI about a dinner party.
Exactly. The AI designs the menu for you, and then it translates that immediately into a shopping cart that gets delivered to your door. This signals a huge shift toward extreme convenience and personalization in e-commerce. AI is becoming the personal shopping assistant for the world.
Speaking of consumer tech and personalization, Eric Majakowski, the founder of Pebble, the original smartwatch pioneer, is back with a new wearable, the Index 01.
A smart ring. And it's focused on simplicity and privacy, priced at only $75. What's unique is its strong pushback against that always-on surveillance model.
Right, not everyone wants their entire life constantly logged by a corporate server.
Exactly. So unlike many competitors that passively record conversations or metrics, the Index 01 only operates when the user intentionally presses a side button to record brief, focused notes. It prioritizes utility and data security over feature bloat.
It's an interesting counterpoint. Meanwhile, the market overall is still moving very quickly.
Oh yeah. Google and Warby Parker are collaborating to launch AI-powered smart glasses in 2026, which indicates that shift toward integrated, personalized AI assistants that you wear daily is coming, whether we want it or not.
Now let's talk about a major economic pivot happening in Asia focused on airspace.
Hong Kong is strategically developing what it's calling its low-altitude economy.
What does that mean?
It's a sophisticated integration of manned and unmanned aviation. So cross-border drone operations, aerial mobility services, all leveraging its connectivity within the Greater Bay Area. They see seamlessly integrated airspace as a crucial economic backbone for attracting trade and investment.
This focus on advanced low-altitude air operations, it kind of dovetails nicely with an earlier point about the costs of technological self-sufficiency. You mentioned a source about the prohibitive cost of going off-grid.
Yes, and that's where the paradox of innovation really hits home, doesn't it? We're talking about quantum radios and AI coding, which are incredible feats of technological mastery.
Right.
Yet at the same time, we're seeing reports detailing the massive, prohibitive costs associated with trying to achieve basic independence. Things like connecting to mains utilities, installing comprehensive solar and battery setups, or setting up reliable water and sewage systems in remote areas.
The initial capital outlay is a nightmare for most people.
It is. It makes true self-sufficiency a financial impossibility for many, accessible only to the privileged few.
So it creates this ironic scenario. We can theorize about warp drives, but the cost of getting stable electricity and water without a utility company is often financially crippling for the average person.
That's the hidden cost of freedom and independence right now. Innovation is accelerating, but accessibility remains a massive issue that often gets overlooked in all the excitement over new tech.
It's a great point. Now, let's pivot to the friction caused by these massive technological leaps. The regulatory battles against big tech, starting with the European Union versus Google.
The EU has launched a critical antitrust probe into Google. The focus is on the company's extensive use of online content. We're talking published materials, YouTube videos, to train its powerful AI systems. The EU is concerned this amounts to exploiting content without fair compensation.
This sets up a profound legal question about copyright and generative AI globally.
It absolutely does. The core legal concern is whether the mass ingestion of copyrighted data for training these large language models, which then produce derivative content, falls under the doctrine of fair use.
And the EU is looking to set a precedent.
Very much so. Through its rigorous digital transparency and market regulation frameworks, the EU is looking to enforce stricter rules that could set a precedent for how all generative AI models are developed and financed globally. It could force them to license data extensively.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is taking action against Chinese telecoms firms, citing security concerns.
Yes, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, announced it may bar 3 significant Chinese telecom companies, China Mobile, China Telecom, and China Unicom, from connecting to U.S. networks.
And while part of the rationale is combating robocalls,
The primary driver is national security. There are concerns regarding data flow and potential espionage.
this confirms that telecom infrastructure is now unequivocally viewed as a security asset.
Absolutely. The decision reflects the consensus in Washington that maintaining the integrity of core communications infrastructure is paramount, and any potential vulnerability, however small, presents an unacceptable national security risk in the context of geopolitical competition.
And finally, a massive commitment signaling where the future of AI infrastructure is being built.
Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella announced a staggering $17.5 billion commitment to advance India's artificial intelligence capabilities.
Wow, 17.5 billion.
It marks Microsoft's largest investment ever in Asia. The focus is comprehensive, driving economic growth, bolstering innovation, enhancing local capabilities, and crucially strengthening cybersecurity across India for an AI-first future. It powerfully positions India as a major global hub for technological development and infrastructure.
That is a staggering sum and a powerful symbol of the global AI arms race. Let's pivot now to the complex and sometimes fraught world of international relations where old alliances are being severely tested.
The transatlantic relationship between the U.S. and Europe appears to be fracturing under some severe strain, and it's largely driven by some pointed rhetoric from the United States.
We saw President Donald Trump launch some sharp critiques against Western European leaders, accusing them of being weak and ineffective, particularly regarding migration policies and their response to the Ukraine conflict.
And he even used the highly charged phrase that Europe faces civilizational erasure. His critique targets European political elites, suggesting they are constrained by political correctness and disastrous migration policies. This rhetoric is not just criticism, it's actively destabilizing traditional diplomatic norms.
And how are European leaders reacting to this highly provocative language and this label of weakness?
European Council President Antonio Costa's response was decidedly sharp. He called on the U.S. to respect its allies and explicitly warned against interfering in European democratic processes.
And he specifically referenced Trump's advocacy for certain patriotic European political parties.
He did. He asserted that it is not Washington's place to influence European electoral choices or sow internal political discord.
This brings us to a clash over regulatory sovereignty, which feels like a key structural divide right now.
It is the core conflict. President Trump publicly condemned the European Union's substantial $120 million fine levied against X, which is formerly Twitter, for transparency violations under the Digital Services Act, or DSA.
And the EU's defense.
The EU defended the fine as necessary to enforce digital transparency and adhere to the bloc's regulatory frameworks. They're asserting their right to govern the large platforms that operate within their borders.
So the U.S. perspective, which often favors minimal regulation for its homegrown tech giants, is clashing directly with the EU's firm commitment to regulatory sovereignty and digital governance.
Exactly. And this debate has massive implications. If the U.S. signals a rollback of support for the EU's regulatory autonomy, it could undermine the ability of the EU to effectively police platforms like Google and Meta, weakening the West's combined power to enforce global tech standards.
And what about the broader security implications for NATO members, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization?
The controversy over a potential perceived or real rollback of the U.S. military footprint in Europe is deeply alarming to European allies. Critics fear that any suggestion of lessening the U.S. commitment to collective defense could embolden Russia, leading to increased instability across Eastern Europe and fundamentally undermining the entire post-Cold War security architecture.
The situation in Ukraine naturally remains central to all these tensions. President Zelensky has made his red line on territory absolutely clear.
Yes, despite some quiet pressure from the U.S. to consider a peace deal that might involve ceding territory, President Volodymyr Zelensky has firmly rejected any proposal that requires Ukraine to relinquish land to Russia.
And he's working on his own plan.
He's preparing a revised peace plan to share with the U.S., maintaining his position that peace must be based on restoring Ukraine's full territorial integrity.
And it appears his European allies are standing firmly with him, even amid some U.S. skepticism.
They are providing renewed, firm backing. Zelensky met with key leaders from the UK, France, and Germany, and he secured fresh commitments of support and security guarantees. This European unity is vital right now, emphasizing the necessity of sustained cooperation to deter future Russian aggression, regardless of any ambiguity surrounding potential U.S. diplomatic actions.
We are also seeing some signs of internal political dissent within Ukraine itself.
Yes, there is a developing internal political subplot here. Former Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba has publicly stated he will only join the military if he's officially drafted, rather than volunteering.
Okay.
He also claimed that reports of a travel ban placed on him and other former diplomats are an attempt by President Zelensky's administration to silence dissenting voices. This just highlights the pressures and internal fractures that can emerge in a nation under such a prolonged existential threat.
And on the military front, what's the latest update from the ground?
Russia claims to be advancing in the Eastern Theater. Specifically, they're asserting control over more than 30% of the town of Murnarat. Meanwhile, there were also reports of Belarus balloons infringing on neighboring airspace, which just heightens nervousness and adds another layer of complexity to the region's already volatile borders.
Now, a major source of diplomatic tension among Western allies, especially within the EU, is the legal fight over those frozen Russian assets.
This is a massive legal and financial quagmire. The European Union has proposed a controversial plan to utilize frozen Russian assets, estimated at around 185 billion.
And they're primarily held in that Belgian financial institution, Euroclear.
Correct. The idea is to use them to finance Ukraine's massive budget deficit. Ukraine desperately needs this foreign assistance. They're projecting a budget deficit of $47.5 billion for 2026.
So why is this meeting so much global opposition, particularly from key allies like Japan and the U.S.?
The opposition is layered. Japan and the U.S. cite legal constraints and overwhelmingly prefer that the funds remain as leverage in any future peace negotiations with Russia. They fear prematurely disposing of this leverage.
And Belgium itself is worried.
More critically, yes, Belgium, where Euroclear holds the majority of the assets, is extremely worried about financial liability.
What exactly is the risk for Belgium?
Well, if sanctions were ever lifted or altered in the future, Russia could mount a massive international legal challenge to reclaim those assets. Belgium fears that the nation, or Euroclear itself, could be held financially liable for the entire 185 billion. This opposition risks creating a deep split within the European Union,
Pitting the political desire to aid Ukraine against the legal and financial stability of member states.
It's a classic conflict between political urgency and legal risk. The decision carries potentially crippling consequences, and it highlights the difficulty of weaponizing financial tools in international disputes.
And finally, in this geopolitics section, we have an uncomfortable topic involving corruption and defense spending, directly involving NATO.
This involves NATO's procurement agency, the NATO Support and Procurement Agency, or NSPA. They have suspended multiple contracts with Elbit Systems, which is Israel's largest arms manufacturer.
And this is due to an ongoing corruption investigation involving bribery allegations.
That's right.
What exactly is the NSPA's role, and why is this corruption so significant right now?
The NSPA is critical. It handles procurement and logistical support for all NATO forces, managing billions in defense spending. The investigation centers around an intermediary, a man named Eliel Elosvili, who is accused of bribing officials within the NSPA. This is so significant because European defense budgets are dramatically rising due to the Ukraine conflict, making transparent and efficient procurement absolutely paramount.
How widespread is the suspension?
At least 15 contracts were suspended. These primarily involve crucial military supplies like artillery shells and naval upgrades. Elbit Systems has also been barred from bidding on future NSPA contracts until the investigation concludes. The whole scandal exposes a problematic network where private operators exploit former NSPA officials who transition into consulting roles, inflating costs and compromising integrity right when Europe needs military preparedness most.
Moving beyond the transatlantic squabbles, let's look at flashpoints across the globe, particularly in Africa, where political volatility continues unabated.
We must start in West Africa, where there was a recent and very short-lived coup attempt in Benin.
Can you detail that situation?
The government of Benin reported a failed coup attempt aimed at overthrowing President Patrice Talon. The incident was swift, but there were confirmed casualties on both sides, which just underscores the political fragility that permeates that whole region. It's part of a broader trend of military takeovers or attempted coups across the Sahel.
And external forces played a crucial role in suppressing this coup.
They did. Neighboring Nigeria's military provided airstrikes, which were crucial in stabilizing the situation and helping to thwart the uprising. Furthermore, France, the former colonial power, confirmed that it provided essential logistical support to the Beninese government.
So that level of intervention highlights the high stakes in the region.
Very high regional and global stakes in maintaining stability and civilian governments in West Africa.
Moving to Central Africa, tensions are flaring up dramatically between the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, and Rwanda.
This conflict has seen a dangerous escalation. Both the DRC and neighboring Burundi are condemning alleged Rwandan incursions, and what they claim is support for the M23 rebel fighters operating in the eastern Congo. The fighting has resulted in the displacement of hundreds of Congolese and Burundian troops who had to seek refuge across borders.
And what's the broader context of the DRC-Rwanda conflict?
It's deeply rooted in ethnic tensions and the control over vast, critical mineral resources in the eastern DRC. The M23, which is an alleged Rwandan proxy, has exacerbated the humanitarian crisis. The U.S. State Department has expressed profound concern, urging Rwanda to halt its reported support for M23,
reflecting the U.S. interest in stabilizing the region.
particularly due to the global reliance on its cobalt and other critical minerals.
Meanwhile, Nigeria continues to face deep internal conflict tied to religious tensions.
Yes, President Trump designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern regarding severe religious freedom violations. The tensions are multifaceted, rooted in historical land disputes and ethnic grievances, which fuel socio-political instability and violence that affects both Christian and Muslim communities in various regions of the country. This designation just highlights the failure to address these deep-seated issues that lead to ongoing internal strife.
Moving to humanitarian crises, the situation in Sudan is, well, it's nothing short of harrowing, particularly regarding civilian casualties.
It is an absolute tragedy. The World Health Organization, the WHO, condemned the ongoing campaign of violence, specifically citing the Sudanese Air Force's bombing campaign and alleged drone strikes by the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, on civilian areas.
And they're targeting towns, markets, hospitals.
Indiscriminately.
What is the documented civilian death toll?
The confirmed death toll stands at least 114 people. Tragically, that includes 63 children. The specific targets included a kindergarten and a rural hospital in a town called Kalogi, which just underscores the indiscriminate nature of the fighting and the profound risks faced by non-combatants.
That just demands accountability. Has there been any recent movement on historical accountability in the region?
There has been a small but vital step toward justice. The International Criminal Court, the ICC, sentenced Ali Muhammad Ali Abd al-Rahman, a prominent commander of the notorious Janjaweed militia in Darfur, often called the Axe Murderer, to 20 years in prison for war crimes committed between 2003 and 2004.
A difficult step toward justice for Darfur victims, even as new atrocities are unfolding daily in Sudan.
Exactly. The ICC's ruling sets a crucial precedent for accountability. It reminds perpetrators that justice, however slow, can eventually prevail, even as the current conflict continues and new war crimes are potentially being committed.
Another geopolitical flashpoint involves the United Nations Relief and Works Agency UNRWA compound in East Jerusalem.
Yes, the UN Secretary General issued a strong condemnation of Israel's recent raid on the UNRWA compound. Israel claimed its tax collectors entered the premises to recover over $3.4 million in unpaid taxes.
But the UN saw it differently.
The UN labeled this action a dangerous precedent and a severe violation of UN immunity protocols. They emphasized that such actions compromise the safety and operational capacity of humanitarian missions in conflict zones globally.
We also have a heartbreaking update from Syria regarding accountability after the recent upheaval there.
A year after the dramatic change in power, while many celebrated the hope for democratic reforms, the humanitarian scar left by the previous regime remains deep. Families are relentlessly searching for thousands of children who were taken during the brutal crackdown under the Assad regime.
How many are still missing?
Over 110,000 Syrians remain unaccounted for, and the uncertainty whether they were killed, kidnapped, or subjected to illegal adoption is an ongoing trauma for families across the country. Human rights organizations are pressing hard for accountability and international intervention to help locate these missing children.
Turning now to the United States political and judicial landscape, where accountability is also highly scrutinized, we have the resignation of a high-profile figure linked to the current administration.
Alina Habba, a key former attorney for President Trump, resigned as the acting U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. This followed an appeals court ruling that disqualified her from the role due to conflict of interest concerns stemming from her previous political ties.
And her departure ties into the broader U.S. Supreme Court debate over executive power, doesn't it?
It does. It aligns with the current debate over the expansion of executive power, particularly how a president interacts with independent regulatory bodies. The court is actively weighing the implications of expanding the president's power in relation to independent agencies like the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC.
Which could alter the balance of power.
It could, and make them more susceptible to political influence in future administrations.
And speaking of transparency, President Trump recently displayed a striking public denial over comments he had made just days prior.
Yes, this incident was widely reported. President Trump publicly refuted comments he explicitly made on video regarding the release of footage related to a boat strike incident in Venezuela. He originally promised to release the video,
but then denied saying that.
Yes, he suggested his aide would decide. This incident, captured clearly on camera, Just raises immediate questions about political transparency and accountability in public discourse.
Meanwhile, a significant lawsuit is proceeding against the FBI director.
12 former FBI agents filed a lawsuit against FBI Director Kash Patel for wrongful termination. They were dismissed for participating in a kneeling photo during a racial justice protest back in 2020. They argue their actions were a legitimate expression of solidarity, and it challenges the limits of political and social expression within federal employment.
Particularly for law enforcement agencies dealing with sensitive social justice issues.
Exactly.
Let's discuss the heated debate around immigration rhetoric, which is being led by the vice president.
Vice President J.D. Vance claimed that mass immigration threatens the American dream. His argument, which aligns with right-leaning economic critiques, is that the influx of undocumented immigrants is driving up costs and making housing unaffordable for working Americans, while primarily benefiting those who profit from cheap labor.
And what's the counterpoint to that?
The criticism, which is largely coming from left-leaning voices and migrant rights activists, is that the administration's ramping up of ICE raids and deportations often targets undocumented individuals with no criminal backgrounds, causing significant social and humanitarian disruption. Critics accuse the government of misusing power and prioritizing a hardline political stance over nuanced social policy.
The narrative remains deeply polarized.
Centered on cost versus human rights.
Finally, in the volatile region of East Asia, military tensions are high following a significant airspace incursion.
South Korea scrambled fighter jets after 9 military aircraft from Russia, and China entered its air defense zone, the KDZ, which is the Korean Air Defense Identification Zone. The South Korean military tracked the aircraft for about an hour.
And this is not an isolated incident, is it?
No, not at all. China confirmed these maneuvers were part of their 10th Joint Strategic Air Patrol. This highlights the ongoing and highly coordinated military collaboration between Russia and China in the region since 2019. This collaboration heightens security tensions on the Korean Peninsula and sends a direct strategic message to South Korea, Japan, and the United States about their regional military presence.
A dangerous dynamic for sure. Moving now from global politics to the global marketplace and the ongoing corporate and financial volatility.
Let's talk money.
Let's start with the Federal Reserve action that affects, well, everything. Lending, mortgages, consumer confidence globally.
The financial consensus is that the Fed is widely expected to cut interest rates for the third time this year. This signifies their ongoing strategy to maintain economic growth and manage inflation expectations, particularly as they look ahead to the economic forecast for 2026.
How are the major markets, the Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ reacting to this anticipation?
They are reacting cautiously. Markets started the day pretty mixed. Investors are in a holding pattern, really. They're preferring to wait for the official guidance on monetary policy before making any substantial bets. Any subtle shift in the Fed's language about future hikes or cuts will directly impact borrowing rates and corporate investment strategies.
We also have a historic economic milestone for a Central European nation.
Poland has achieved remarkable economic growth. It has officially crossed the $1 trillion nominal gross domestic product, or GDP, mark. This positions Poland among the world's top 20 economies.
A huge achievement.
It reflects decades of successful post-Soviet transition and market liberalization.
And this growth has translated to geopolitical recognition.
Absolutely. Poland received an unprecedented invitation to observe the G20 summit in Miami. This is historic. It's the first time a Central or Eastern European nation has been included in G20 discussions. This inclusion reflects its successful transition and will grant Poland a new voice on international trade, finance, and security matters, especially concerning the war in Ukraine and regional stability.
On the other side of the global trade equation, China is acknowledging some economic pain from global tensions.
Yes, Premier Li Keqiang acknowledged this week that the negative impacts of tariffs imposed on China are increasingly becoming apparent. This official acknowledgement comes amidst ongoing trade tensions, particularly with the U.S., and it suggests growing concern within Beijing about the long-term effects of these duties on supply chains, manufacturing output, and employment.
Let's move to a fascinating struggle in corporate culture. The battle for brand identity at Ben & Jerry's.
This is a classic conflict, isn't it? The activist brand identity versus massive corporate ownership. Co-founder Ben Cohen has issued a clear public warning that corporate decisions made by Unilever, the multinational parent company, could destroy the brand's socially conscious ethos and identity.
He fears Unilever will inevitably prioritize pure profit over the social and environmental values that define Ben & Jerry's.
That is the core issue. It raises broader questions about corporate accountability and whether the mission-driven aspects of a company can truly survive and thrive under the umbrella of a massive, profit-focused multinational. Cohen argues that the identity, the very soul of the brand, is at risk of being homogenized for shareholder returns.
Meanwhile, the media industry is engaged in a high-stakes, aggressive acquisition war.
Paramount has launched a hostile bid for Warner Bros. Discovery. This is an aggressive maneuver actively challenging an existing non-hostile deal between Warner Bros. Discovery and Netflix.
And this is getting complicated.
Extremely complex. It involves political figures like Jared Kushner and a powerful Abu Dhabi fund.
This just underscores the volatile and rapidly evolving streaming landscape, where consolidation is key to future survival.
It highlights the desperation for scale and exclusive content libraries. The involvement of major political and sovereign wealth players shows just how high the stakes are in controlling the infrastructure of global content delivery.
This corporate volatility often creates friction with the customer base, as we saw in the backlash against one fast food chain post-acquisition.
Yes, that Jersey Mike's anecdote is instructive. Customers blasted the chain post-acquisition for what they perceived as a drop in quality. They were citing smaller servings and higher prices.
A common phenomenon.
It is. The moment corporate profit goals are seen to outweigh customer loyalty and product integrity, the disconnect often leads to swift and sharp consumer backlash.
And finally, a quirky but high-profile legal dispute in competitive retail.
The activewear brand, Sweaty Betty, is engaged in a legal battle with a period underwear company over alleged copied advertising slogans. Sweaty Betty firmly denies the copying, but the case highlights the intense intellectual property tensions in competitive retail markets where branding and marketing play crucial roles. Legal experts are watching, anticipating this case could set precedents for future marketing and IP disputes over commercial phrasing.
That's a lot of drama over a catchy tagline. We also have a major regulatory action against India's leading airline, Indigo.
The Indian Civil Aviation Ministry took decisive action here. They mandated a 10% reduction in operations for Indigo, which is the country's largest airline. This move came after the airline faced soaring flight cancellations and nationwide disruptions, severely impacting traveler confidence in national infrastructure.
So the government literally stepped in to force a curtailment of operations to enhance service reliability.
Precisely. It's a rare but sometimes necessary regulatory step aimed at protecting consumers and ensuring the airline can operate within sustainable service parameters before disruptions cascade further across the country's vast aviation network.
And a final market data point that confirms our reliance on smartphones and convenience.
Mobile casino gaming has a nearly 12% compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, over the last 5 years.
Wow.
This surge is driven by increasing smartphone penetration and, critically, a shift towards shorter, more frequent gaming sessions. People are filling micro moments like standing in line or on a short commute with personalized entertainment.
That ties back perfectly to the convenience and personalization theme we saw in the tech segment with AI shopping assistants. Okay, let's wrap up our deep dive with a look at societal threads, covering everything from life-saving medical breakthroughs to crucial legal battles for digital rights.
We can begin with a major medical breakthrough that offers genuine hope to those with previously incurable blood cancer.
Can you detail the treatment?
This is an innovative, targeted treatment that focuses on specific genetic markers within the tumors. And the results have been remarkable. 7 out of 11 previously incurable patients are now appearing to be cancer-free.
That's a huge step forward.
A major step forward in personalized oncology, leveraging genetic analysis to offer hope where traditional systemic treatments often fail.
We are also seeing a controversial but growing perspective among doctors regarding the aggressiveness of cancer intervention.
This involves the debate over managing so-called indolent cancers. These are slow-growing tumors that pose minimal immediate risk. A growing number of doctors and researchers now advocate for active surveillance over aggressive intervention,
arguing that the invasive treatments might do more harm than good.
Exactly. They argue that subjecting patients to highly invasive treatments with severe side effects is often unnecessary and harmful if the tumor is contained and slow-moving. It's a shift toward true personalized medicine, balancing risks and benefits based on the patient's specific tumor characteristics.
And what about obesity management? We have research on tirzepatide, also known as Mounjaro.
The research on tirzepatide confirms the drug is highly effective in altering the brain's signaling related to food cravings and appetite for obesity management. However, reports also suggest a crucial long-term challenge. The effects can sometimes fade, with cravings roaring back, if usage is discontinued.
So it underscores the need for ongoing management.
And lifestyle changes and continued research into the longevity and accessibility of the drug's effects.
On a much grimmer note related to health accountability, we have a shocking interim report on maternity care in the UK.
Baroness Amos led the interim report, which found that England's maternity care is much worse than was anticipated. The findings included deeply concerning accounts of dirty wards, inadequate nutrition being provided to new mothers, and overall poor physical and emotional support.
This exposes systemic failures in care quality and patient safety.
It points directly to chronic underfunding and systemic neglect within the National Health Service, the NHS. And it calls for urgent, widespread structural and financial changes to ensure basic patient safety and dignity.
Shifting to high-profile legal accountability, a federal judge has greenlit increased transparency regarding two infamous names from recent history.
A federal judge approved a motion to unseal grand jury records related to the Ghislaine Maxwell case. This is part of the broader effort to increase transparency following the Epstein Files Act. The unsealed records, including transcripts and exhibits, are expected to provide further insights into the extent of the alleged trafficking operation and potentially implicate other high-profile individuals associated with Jeffrey Epstein.
Accountability is also being enforced in the digital realm, specifically against surveillance technology used in domestic abuse cases.
The Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, upheld its ban on the app SpyPhone, firmly rejecting the petition from its CEO. SpyPhone is classified as stalkerware, an app used covertly to track individuals, often deployed in domestic abuse scenarios. The FTC's decision reaffirms privacy rights and underscores the necessity of regulatory oversight to prevent the misuse of surveillance technology that facilitates interpersonal harm.
Back in the U.S. courts, the Supreme Court has made a notable non-decision on a highly charged cultural issue, book bans.
The U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear a case from Texas concerning the removal of books from public libraries, deemed objectionable by local officials. By refusing to hear it, the court let the lower court's ruling stand,
Which highlights the ongoing, intense national debate.
about the limits of free speech and open access to diverse literature versus parental and community control over school and library curricula. It leaves the battle to be fought in lower courts and local jurisdictions.
In the UK, we also see how these rights issues play out in the workplace regarding inclusion policies.
An NHS Fife tribunal ruled that a nurse, Sandy Peggy, was harassed in a case related to transgender rights in changing facilities. The tribunal found that certain actions related to the facilities caused distress and amounted to harassment. It illustrates the delicate balance organizations must strike between respecting diverse gender identities, implementing inclusive policies, and ensuring all staff feel safe and supported in their workplace.
And finally, a global precedent being set in digital parenting originating in Australia.
Australia has implemented a landmark, world-first ban on social media use for individuals under the age of 16. This affects millions of children and teens.
And the government's rationale.
They argue it is a necessary, drastic intervention to mitigate severe risks, like escalating youth mental health issues, cyberbullying, and exposure to harmful content.
This is a major regulatory step that bypasses parental control. Is it being viewed as a model globally?
Yes, very much so. It is being watched globally as a potential model for regulating youth interaction with online platforms, especially by governments struggling to curb the harms of social media consumption. However, critics are concerned about government overreach, censorship implications, and the likelihood of determined teens easily circumventing the age restrictions using VPNs or other methods. Nevertheless, it signals a global urgency to address the documented dangers of youth social media consumption.
That takes us from the farthest reaches of space, through geopolitical showdowns, right down into the digital ethics of our homes. What a sweeping view of the world today.
This deep dive certainly reveals a complex reality. The accelerating pace of scientific possibility, from warp drive theory and black hole confirmations to AI coding assistants and portable quantum radio devices, is pushing the boundaries of human achievement further than ever before.
But this scientific ascent contrasts so sharply with the deep-seated political and social conflicts we've analyzed. Human institutions are being tested to their absolute limits, whether it's the regulatory sovereignty battles between the US and Europe over big tech, the tragic humanitarian crises in Sudan, or the delicate balancing act of judicial ethics in high-profile cases.
And we saw that classic paradox. Innovation doesn't always translate into accessibility. We observe the quantum radio device offering unparalleled communication freedom to troops in challenging terrain, a real triumph of high-end physics.
Right.
Yet we also noted the source detailing the financial nightmare many households face trying to live off-grid, where the prohibitive capital costs of achieving true energy and water independence are just crippling.
That gap between sophisticated possibility and basic accessibility feels like the defining feature of our era. In this time of accelerating technological change and unprecedented possibility, we have to ask, what is the hidden cost of freedom and independence? Does innovation always lead to greater accessibility? Or is there an escalating price tag attached to true self-sufficiency that only the privileged few can afford?
That's the question we leave you with. How do we ensure that the progress we make in the cosmos and in our code translates into practical, affordable, and equitable improvements for everyone here on Earth?
Fantastic points to consider. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
Until next time.
For enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.